Well, I enjoyed watching your lesson.
Thanks.
So now I'm going to just ask some questions about the lesson. Some are reflective questions, and so we'll go ahead and get started. So what were the key points you listed in your lesson as you went through that?
That they needed to problem solve, to tie it back. I talked a lot about tying it back to our what's missing problem in calendar, and explaining how they solved the problem, not just the right answer, but how they actually came up with the problem.
So are there artifacts from the lesson that I should examine?
You can look at their notebooks and see how they did, which I keep from the beginning of the year, so you can really see their progression from how they first started to where they are today.
To see, especially with explaining how they solved.
Right.
So which parts of the lesson were you most pleased with?
I was pleased with how they actually solved the problem, that they got right to work, and that many of them were actually using an equation. There were just a couple that were still drawing circles. You know, we've talked about that before now that we're in bigger numbers. It's hard. It takes time. It's not the most efficient way to draw 28 circles out. So I was pleased with how many of them used the actual equation.
Good. Were there parts of the lesson that you, were not as successful as you had hoped?
I'm still trying to find out exactly the best way to help those that aren't getting it. I feel like with this particular strategy, that they are on their own a lot, just trying different things, and then I feel like if they're stuck there for a while. You know, it's just keep trying. We'll try it a different way, and I think if they really don't understand the concept, they're just kind of spinning their wheels. So I'm not exactly sure the best way to solve that problem, but that's one area that I would like to see some improvement in.
Well, and you did do a good job of connecting with those students that were having a hard time.
Well, thanks.
From what I see. Which activities do you think fostered high involvement during your lesson?
I think the ones that really got it and then could go on to that second problem, they were really challenging themselves. And I think had I had a third problem, they would have been trying to go on to that. But then I don't want it to become a contest where who's the first one finished, you know, so you've got to have that balance between the two.
So how satisfied were you with the engagement of all your students?
I was overall very satisfied. I think they stayed on track. And even when they got discouraged or were stuck, they kept going. I didn't see too many people that were just doing other things or drawing in their notebook, which they would do at the beginning of the year. So they've come a long way.
What about the students that were struggling a bit more? What about their engagement?
It's not as high as I wanted it to be. They wanted to look on another person's paper, but yet they had different numbers, and there wasn't enough of me to be with them as long as that I wanted to be with them.
Yeah, it's hard to get to everybody. So, do you have any ideas as to how you could increase the student engagement? Or I know you kind of talked about how you're not quite sure the best strategy to help those struggling learners kind of keep going once they're stuck. Have you had time to reflect on that, or?
Well, it might almost have to be where I get even smaller numbers than I had today and pull them over to the table, because the rest were pretty independent, and let them keep going.
So maybe work in a group.
Right.
kind of scaffold up to those
Right.
higher numbers
Right.
as they kind of become more successful. Yeah, that's a good idea. So how will you assess that students are learning the skills in this lesson or with this concept that they're learning?
Well, we have our grade level assessments that we use for both the Common Core for the district and then for our report card. So they'll be given those and have to work on independently.
And those will be given at the end of the quarter?
Which is coming up.
Yep, that is. Okay. So as you checked in with students, how do you ensure that you reach all the students? Those of the students that raise their hands and those that, might be struggling or need help, but they don't necessarily raise their hand.
And I think that's an area I need to work on because I get caught up in that with their hands raised and then don't always get to those that are working but just don't raise their hands. So that's a good thing that I need to work on.
Easy to see those hands
Yes.
and know where to go.
Yes.
And, yeah. Okay. So what student behaviors did you observe during the lesson?
There were just a couple that were just with attention problems, the typical not on task and blurting out and wondering what you were doing, and then it was different today because we had snack, and so that was, we kind of got off to a rough start, but
you set the expectations for that snack, how, you didn't want them to go to the water fountain, even though they're used to being able to go to the water fountain. You definitely set the stage at the beginning for that.
Oh, thanks.
So what were some classroom management techniques that you used during the lesson when you saw those behaviors?
I do tally marks based on the groups they're sitting in. If they're all working together or following directions, they can earn a tally mark, which I like that because then even if you have a child who doesn't do successful on the individual ones, may do more clipping down than clipping up, can still work with the table and get rewarded that way. And then the classroom management of the clipping up for good behavior, clipping down for behavior that needs to be changed.
And one thing that I noticed at the end, there was a student that you had asked him to hold his notebook or to, because he was messing with it, and then he did a good job not messing with it until the end, until you were giving the direction for the next activity to transition to the next activity, and then he started messing with it again. I think because he knew the transition was coming up, and you ignored it at first. Well, ignored it, but then I heard your direction to go sit, and I was like, well, she's probably thinking, we're going to be sitting soon, I probably just need to ignore that right now. So is there anything you would change about the lesson?
Just with those two that I gave different numbers, I would give them the same numbers and work with them in a smaller group.
Differentiate a little bit differently.
Right? I know.
Sometimes it's hard to find the, best way to differentiate until you try different things. So it's good that you see that and try new things there. So is there anything you would do the same in future lessons?
After I had said to tie it into what's missing that we do in calendar, that seemed to help several people. So I would continue to tie it into things that we've already done. I don't know what is so different. You can give them a subtraction problem with regrouping and they'll sit down and do it. But when it's in a word problem like that, it just gets their brain thinking differently. And it's like, I don't know what to do.
A little bit more challenging. So did you experience any difficulties when you were presenting or in the lesson? Did any significant difficulties come up that you needed to kind of change up or go with the flow? And then maybe
just like with those two with the lower numbers, I did not like how I did that, having them each have separate numbers. It was too much for me to manage to help, I think, to make them feel successful.
To go in between.
Yes.
Okay. So are there any skills that you feel that you can develop further to be a more effective teacher?
I think I need to come up with a way where I'm not just focusing on the hand raisers, that I either have a set almost routine where I'm going to focus in on table 1 today and maybe take notes on them and let the others go, and then rotate that way, or just make a more conscious effort to really dip in with everybody.
What personal growth goals have you set for yourself after reviewing or reflecting on the lesson?
Well, I would just say with this whole way of teaching, math has been new to me. So I think just jumping in with 2 feet and doing it this way.
Just giving it a try. And
hard to teach an old dog new tricks.
so
So
go with the flow and see what needs to be changed and adjusted as you go.
Right.
So what are your next steps now?
We'll just continue to do this, and it's hard also to find that CGI balance of the problem solving and then with just other skills that don't necessarily fall in, like geometry doesn't fall in as easy as some other things. So to tie in the curriculum but still follow the strategy.
All right, well, thank you for meeting with me and talking about the lesson.
You're welcome. Thanks for your
Hope you
comments.
enjoy the process.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.